Hi there everyone, welcome back. The mirror stamping technique literally doubles the amount of stampable images you can make. I have 3 crafting tricks that have helped me design perfectly symmetrical cards that are so easy to make. I'm focusing on this larger floral cluster from Engraved Motifs stamp set. This stamp set is exclusive to the Engraved Motifs Craft Your Life project kit. This bold outline style is perfect for demonstrating mirror stamping basics and easily fits an A2 sized card front. The mirror stamping technique is made entirely possible by the Altenew stamp wheel and sticky mat. If you still haven't snagged the stamp wheel, I have it linked in the description box and over on my blog. The first point I need to make about mirror stamping is having a great, consistent reference point or precision stamping. I'm using the number 1 stencil of the stamp wheel center alignment guides to perfectly center my A2 panel in the center of my stamp wheel stage and sticky mat. This is made out of the same high quality stencil material you use from Altenew and sticks right to the sticky mat's grid. Then all I have to do is nestle my A2 panel into the corner of my alignment guide. We'll come back to this concept, but the other tool I need to make a symmetrical card is this quadrant alignment guide. Now, I made this myself with some scrap acetate and a permanent marker. I made perpendicular lines on this 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 sheet by marking the center lines at 2 1/8 vertically and 2 3/4 inches horizontally. I'm adding this centering template to my stamp wheel as I would a panel of cardstock. Then I'm planning the orientation of a stamp that occupies only half of my panel. This motif happens to work very well, and no part of the image crosses the second half of my centering template. I'll replace my DIY template with a piece of cardstock now, and again I am nestling this cardstock in the stamp wheel against the edges of the center alignment guides. This is important as I mirror stamp, and I will constantly be referring to the consistent contact between the center alignment guides and the cardstock. Alright, so now we are ready to stamp. I highly recommend a good pigment ink or slow drying ink for mirror stamping. The Altenew Obsidian pigment ink is perfect for this technique, and I'll show you why. But first I'm stamping this tulip motif as I normally would with the stamp wheel onto a panel of white cardstock. This is a panel of Neenah Solar White in 110 pounds. In order to mirror stamp this tulip cluster, I'll remove the panel I just stamped. Next, I'll ink up the stamp I want mirrored, just as I normally would, but instead of stamping on the cardstock panel, I'll stamp this image onto my sticky mat's grid. You may need to really burnish the area where the edge of the stencil meets the sticky mat for full contact of the ink. Then I'll quickly bring back my stamped panel, flip my panel face down along the vertical axis, and align the panel to the center alignment guide. I'm taking my time with this because I will need to precisely return this panel about 5 or 6 times. I'm burnishing the back of my cardstock panel to the pigment ink on my sticky mat with the side of my thumb. I'll repeat the ink transfer and mirror stamping on this half of the cardstock panel until I get a solid outline. It'll take about 4 to 6 times, but the key is consistent placement on the stamp wheel sticky mat. I learned that by about the 3rd time, if I'm not getting great transfers of ink from the sticky mat to my cardstock panel, that it helped for me to wipe the ink from the sticky mat with a soap and water solution so that my mat is completely free of ink. Then I can keep inking up the stamp, transferring the ink to the sticky mat, and then finally stamping that mirrored image to the cardstock panel. Okay, pause this panel in your mind for a moment, we'll come back to it. I just wanted to demonstrate this mirror stamping with another image. This time I'm going for a landscape orientation. So I can use my DIY centering template again to plan the placement of another engraved motif stamp. Again, this image is on 1/2 of the panel vertically. Then I can stamp this image in the same obsidian pigment ink as I normally would. But before I start mirror stamping, I'm going to use the beneficial property of pigment inks by adding clear embossing powder to the still wet outline. That's what I have here is a clear heat embossed black outline. Now before I start mirror stamping, I'll clean my sticky mat with a soapy water solution and begin building the pigment layers for mirror stamping. Then once I have applied several mirrored layers of the pigment ink, I can apply my clear embossing powder and heat set it. And that's exactly what I did to this first panel. So now I have two mirrored cards with black outlines and clear embossing over them. The Engraved Motifs Craft Your Life project kit also contains a simple coloring stencil and layering stencil. This stencil is an easy way to add color to these bold outlines. I'm following the layering guide found on the stamp packaging trifold to quickly reference which stencil numbers I need. For this image, I need the number 1 stencil and the number etching and Altenew logo facing me. For the leaves, I'm using Frosted Foliage Fresh Dye Ink Bundle. And for the flower layers, I'm using 4 Scoops Mini Ink Cube Set and a Mini Ink blending brush to apply all the ink layers. The wonderful thing about these images that contain simple coloring stencils is now I can apply color to the mirrored image by flipping the stencil over. The number 1 etching and Altenew logo are now facing my craft mat. Then I can fill in the same layers of this image on the back side of the stencil to get the mirror shapes. I'll continue to fill in the outlines of this mirror set of images with the number 2 stencil. For the landscape card, I'm using Nature's Wonders to fill in the foliage layers, and Sweet Dreams to fill in the flowers. All of the layers I need for this outline are on the number 3 stencil. To finish this card, I'm adding a generous amount of black splatter from Jet Black ink spray and white splatter from Pure White ink spray. I used the coordinating sentiment stamps and its offset die to finish this card. This design was inspired by Scandinavian folk art and uses mirror stamping technique. Making this card was easy with the Altenew stamp wheel, a great pigment ink, and layering stencils. By the way, this video is part of the April 2023 Marvelous Monthly release from Altenew. Make sure you show my crafty friends some love by watching their video and let them know I sent you. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you're new here, welcome. Please subscribe to my channel and like this video. I'll see you again very soon.